Hey guys, welcome to the Outdoor Genetics Podcast, and today we have a special guest speaker, but before we go too far, I'd like to talk about our sponsor really quick. Our sponsor is chumbumz. Chumbumz is an outdoor adventure community where people can come together no matter what your passion is, whether it be fishing or hunting, mountain climbing, gardening. We can come together, and on an awesome platform. There's a lot of perks that come with being a chumbumz member. So guys, be sure to go check out chumbumz. Is an awesome conservative ran platform, owned, operated by military vets. It's an awesome group of people, guys. Check them out. That's chumbumz, CHUMBUMZ. All right, guys, our guest speaker, we have Trent here from Thumper Outdoors. Trent, thank you for joining the show today, man.
Hey, man, I appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, give us a little bit of a rundown of who you are, what you're about. Let us know who you are.
Well, I am Trent. I'll just give you a quick rundown of my archery journey hunting history. When I was 13 years old, I was flipping through channels on a Sunday morning looking for cartoons, and I could not for the life of me find anything. I just so happened to flip on a show where there was a deer on the screen. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I like wildlife. And about 2 seconds later, that deer got shot and ran off. What just so happened, that was an episode of the Fitzgeralds, and I had never seen a hunting show before. My family was not hunters. My dad was a small game hunter when he was younger. My grandpas had told me about small game hunting, but nobody was a deer hunter. But I had saw this, and something about that just absolutely captivated me. I ran into my parents' bedroom, said, I want a bow for Christmas. They bought me a bow for Christmas, and the rest is history. I spent 6 very long, hard years teaching myself everything I could possibly learn. I was reading articles online, magazines, on forums, talking to people, on the phone with literally anybody who would give me the time of day to learn. And it's just kind of blossomed into Thumper Outdoors, which is a YouTube channel and kind of just a social media brand as a whole. And I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell you what, me personally, I've got a similar story. I come from the big city. I come from Houston, Texas, Dallas, Texas, and we moved up to a little town here in Oklahoma. Like, when I say little, I mean, you drive past it, if you blink, you're going to miss it. And when we moved out here, I was actually starting to get into fishing and stuff like that. I grew up in a family that liked mountain climbing and camping, but hunting and fishing, not really, And I was out fishing one day, and I heard some turkeys gobble, and they were gobbling nonstop. And I believe I was 11 at the time, and I actually ended up creeping up through the woods and up into this field. I was right on the tree line, and I look out and I see a bunch of turkeys gobbling. And that for me is what sold it for me. I was just like, oh my goodness, I want to know anything and everything I can. It's amazing how nature can just captivate somebody like that.
Yeah, it was. I really, to this day, cannot explain what exactly it was that grabbed a hold of me. It was just, like I said, I can't really explain it. Just, they shot that deer, and of course, with all the hunting shows, they flip back and the person's so excited, and then they recover the deer and they're thankful. And the Fitzgeralds, I think, particularly do a really good job of showing, the thankfulness and the family aspect and all things that I think just pulled me in. Like, that looks great, that looks awesome, and the rest is history. I can't imagine my life now without hunting or without that experience. I don't know where I would be.
It would be a weird thing to think about it now that you've had it for so long. It'd be a weird thing to think that you could go without it.
Yeah, I don't imagine, I can't imagine not hunting, not shooting a bow. Yeah, like you said, it's almost like, to me, it's almost like thinking about not breathing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can't fathom it.
Well, and that was a part of the reason why, that's part of the reason why I was glad that you said you would be willing to be on the show, was because, our target audience is the people that have either never been involved in hunting or fishing or the outdoor industry, and they want to get involved in some form or fashion. Those are really the people that we are trying to reach, and we've had several success stories, but I was like, you know what? I want to bring somebody on, and we've talked about, we used to do these podcasts and we actually stopped for a while, and now we're picking them back up. And I was talking to some of our co-hosts, and I was like, I really want to pick this back up, but I want to find somebody that we can do a podcast with that, is reaching out, and they're touching these people that may not have that full-on grasp like somebody that's been hunting for 40 years.
Right.
And when I actually came across your stuff through TikTok, and instantly I was just like, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's obviously done his research. The fact that he's going out of his way, just talking about like your broadhead reviews, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going out of your way. I mean, this stuff, it's, to my understanding, most of it, if not all of it, comes out of your pocket.
Yeah, so every penny is funded completely out of my pocket at this point. I'm big on transparency, so I'm not afraid to talk about, the income. And I do make a little bit of money from both TikTok and YouTube, but
Sure.
It is not even close to what I spend. To give you an idea, last year I spent $17,000 between archery equipment and camera gear.
Ooh, that's a big hunk of change right there.
Yeah, broadheads alone last year for testing was right around $3,000.
Oh my goodness! Now I know because like I said, I do follow you on your TikTok, especially. Love watching those your videos there. But so do you typically stick around the more budget friendly, or are you just kind of all over the place?
Yeah, so I've been really kind of focusing in lately on the kind of people I want to reach with my channel, and I'm after guys like me, and I'm not by any means rich. I'm just utterly obsessed with archery. That's why I spend so much money on it. It's not that I'm got a boatload of money to spend. It's just I don't spend money on anything else really. But
Right.
One thing for me when I first got started is I was spending all this money on things that were just advertised really well, but weren't really that good.
Sure.
And if I could have a tenth of that money back, I would probably be a lot better off than I am. So I wanted to start doing something that I could help people not waste money. And I wanted to help the guy that doesn't have the money to go blow and try a million things, hone in on that one thing that will really work for him. And that's kind of what I do. So my goal now is basically, honestly, it's just save people money.
Right. Well, that's awesome. That's admirable. Anybody that's willing to go out of their way, out of their own pocket to say, hey, I'm doing this to help other people. There's something to be said about that. That's an important deal.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of, I've noticed, because I think most people that are stewards of archery and hunting want to get more people involved. I've never talked to anybody that doesn't have that goal in some form or fashion.
Right.
And I share that goal, but one thing I've figured out is there's a lot of people that want to get involved that don't have the means to go out and buy a brand new bow. Not to say that there aren't people that do that, but there's a lot of people that don't. So if you watch my content, right, you'll see a lot of my stuff is budget oriented. Now, I am all over the spectrum. Don't get me wrong. I've shot, expensive broadheads. I've shot cheap broadheads. I've shot expensive bows. I've shot cheap bows. And I don't discriminate against any of those. It's one of my big things is shoot your budget. Don't ever
Right.
feel ashamed because you can only afford what I consider an entry-level bow. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm shooting a bow this year that I've been pushing for quite a while. Would be considered entry-level, and it's a great little bow. I like it a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. Well, real quick, let's do this little icebreaker here. We're gonna call this the speed round. Okay. So
Okay.
basically, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shoot out 2 words to you, and you pick the first one that comes to your mind. And there's no right or wrong answer, but just kind of a way to get more of the brain ticking, I guess. The blood pumping. Okay. So
Okay.
speed round. Here we go. Hunting or fishing?
Hunting.
Deer or turkey?
Deer.
Meat or trophy?
Meat.
Camo or flannel?
Camo.
Campfire or fireplace?
Campfire.
Tree stand or saddle?
Saddle.
Long range or close range?
Close range.
Early fall or late winter?
Ooh. Uh, Late winter.
Ooh, there you go. All right. Well, I just wanted to kind of get those out of the way. Just something
I
to
like
kind of
that.
spark something up, you know. Early fall or late winter, that seemed to really, no, I'm not going to say stump you, but you had to think about that one.
Yeah, man. So I think I'm a little bit weirder than most of the average guys out there that are hunting. Rut is my least favorite time of the year to be in the woods.
Oh, really?
I prefer late winter ultimately, but I really like early season as well.
Right, right.
Yes, so that stems because I'm a public land hunter exclusively, and rut. I live in Illinois, and Illinois is a big buck state, and particularly on the public land I hunt during rut, it is a madhouse with not only residents but non-residents. So
Right.
I don't like rut. The nice thing about rut is, of course, deer up and moving, and especially with more people in the woods, they're stirring the deer up and keeping them on their feet more, usually.
Right.
On the flip side of that, you're dealing with a lot more people. During archery season, to me, there's not really a safety aspect involved, but it's a lot more people. I mean, you have a higher likelihood of running into people, of getting walked in on, and that's public land for you. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I fully understand that. But during early season, a lot of locals think, I've had a lot of locals tell me it's too hot. It's too hot. Can't be out there hunting them during early season. And then late season, rut's over. So the most exciting time of the year for most people is gone. And a lot of people have used up their vacation, and it's cold. Nobody wants to be out in the cold. So,
Right. Well, a lot of people, it kind of turns back to the luxury point. Hunting isn't what it used to be nowadays. It's more recreational nowadays than it's ever been, and
Yep.
I'm going to say even for myself, you know what, when it's minus 10 degrees outside, I don't like being out. I mean,
Yeah, man. I mean, don't get me wrong. As much as I like late winter, there are days, because the way I hunt, when late season rolls around, I don't hunt mornings anymore unless I have a particular deer that I'm trying to hunt, and I haven't tried to hunt a particular deer in quite a few years now. But I hunt evenings, and there are evenings where I'll get everything together and I'll look at the weather on my phone and it says -15, and I go, it's really warm in here.
That's right.
Here lately, filming my hunts and stuff like that tend to motivate me a little bit better to get out.
Sure.
Usually, it just depends. It depends on my season too. Sometimes I burn myself out pretty early.
Right. Well, for me, I don't get me wrong. Sure, I love the rut because, like you said, the deer are on their feet, they're running, they're pushing. You never know what's going to happen. Sure, but for me, I'm going to say, for me personally, I'm an early season hunter because I love the idea of being able to, I guess, pattern, because I've spent countless hours in the woods scouting, figuring out which deer are coming from which direction. Now granted, I don't hunt public land exclusively, so I'm coming from a little bit of a different standpoint than what you do, because it is, public grounds and private grounds, that's two different ball games, to me.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. When I started hunting, I hunted private ground. I had a few places that I could hunt, and as I got older and time passed, hunting seemed to become more popular and became a lot of a money sport, where if you could afford to lease ground or anything like that, you were the one hunting the private. And that's actually what happened. Is I had 3 private locations, and all 3 of them ended up leased. The farmer that owned them, 3 different farmers, but they all ended up leasing their ground. And then eventually one guy moved. So I lost in the same year, I lost all of my private ground, and that's when I transitioned to public. So that would have been about 9 years ago.
Oh, man.
And I've been hunting public for 9 years now. So yeah, and they are 2 completely different worlds, especially if you have a semblance of an understanding of how to properly hunt. The one thing I guess I'm thankful for is, back when I had the private ground, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was still in that learning phase. Heck, I'm still in that learning phase, but I didn't
Sure.
really know what I was doing. I had only been hunting for about 7 years at the time, and I spent the first 6 just trying to figure things out at a bare minimum. So when I lost it, it sucked, but it wasn't as valuable to me as it would be now if I were to lose private ground, because I understand what's going on. But on private
Sure.
ground, even small pieces, it's a lot easier to pattern deer move it, understand what they're doing. They get a lot less pressure. I mean, on public ground, if I can get the same deer to do the same thing 3 days in a row, I'm flying.
Right, right.
And it's just, I mean, it's tough. But, you know, the same reason you like early season is the same reason I like late season. Is, to me, it gets a lot easier to pattern deer in late season.
Yep. Absolutely.
Especially on public, because at that point, all the pressure's gone.
Right. Well, and you pretty much hit the nail on the head earlier when you said for the majority of people, the part that they are most excited about is already gone.
Yep.
The part where they're putting all that pressure, you know, in there, now that it's done, you're going to have the few dedicated hunters out there, but it ain't going to be nearly as packed off like if you was to go out there when the rut's been good and kicked off for 4 days, and you go out there and you see vehicles lined up all the way down the stretch that they can be lined up on, and you know, like you said, it's a lot easier for that aspect.
It gets packed. The public land I frequent the most is a little over 15,000 acres, and I don't know what the numbers were last year, but 2 years ago, that 15,000 acres had just over 16,000 hunter trips.
Oh my goodness.
And of those 16,000 hunter trips, it was something like 6,000 of them were in the 3-week span from November 1st to the 3rd week in November.
Wow. Holy cow.
I mean, it's really a destination spot for this state because it produces some really quality deer, but we have a lot of guys from up north in the Chicago area come down. A lot of out-of-staters will hit it if they can draw in for it. That's the one thing that's nice about out-of-staters is they have to draw to get a spot there. But
right.
I mean, we have a lot of people travel from all over just the state of Illinois, much less surrounding states, to hunt that specific piece.
Right, right. Well, you know, that's a topic that gets brought up a lot down here with me and several other people. I'm not necessarily like the outdoor genetics team, but just people that I'm friends with that are involved with the outdoor industry, you know, talking about out-of-state hunters. You know, it's like Oklahoma it's in a turn right now. Oklahoma has some of the, in all honesty, the lax regulations on out-of-staters to come and hunt, and it's Oklahoma's stepping up its game in the realm of whitetail hunting. I mean, I'm not a trophy hunter by any stretch of the imagination, but I still keep up with kind of trophy states and stuff like that. And Oklahoma's a sleeper state. Not to put that out there so everybody comes flooding your state or anything, but Oklahoma is a sleeper state. There are some absolute studs killed in Oklahoma every year. Oh,
people
100%.
Just don't give it any attention.
They don't. Well, I mean, you know, you start talking about, you know, any and every major TV show, hunting TV show, I should say, that's going to be doing trophy hunting, they're not coming to Oklahoma to do it. So everybody sees that and they're saying, well, where are they going? That's where we want to go. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a reason why those big names are going there. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's because they do produce those deer. But I totally agree. And I'm not saying that because I'm an Okie at heart. I mean, like I said, like I told you before we started recording, you know, I'm originally from Texas, you know, so,
sure.
You know, now granted, I don't necessarily say, oh, I'm a Texan or I'm an Okie or however you want to say it. You know, I'm a human, you know, I'm American. But, I mean, Oklahoma, when it comes to hunting, is definitely, like you said, a sleeper state.
It is definitely a sleeper state. I went to Oklahoma last year on a hog hunt and had a great time, and I'd never been to Oklahoma before that. I like that state. No, I lied. I had been to Oklahoma once to Tulsa for business, but it was just a weekend thing. It was a business trip. I didn't really get to enjoy myself. But Oklahoma's a nice state too. Like, I really enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, it's not bad out here. It is. Oh my goodness, I'm not sure what your state ranks in the windiness factor. But I know Oklahoma is up there on the board in the windy factor, but minus the wind, it's not too bad.
Yeah. I don't know how Illinois ranks either, but I can tell you it ranks pretty much at the bottom in everything else. So, except for deer hunting. That's the one thing the state can do well.
Right. Well, real quick, so you were talking about you had made a trip down here to Oklahoma to go do a hog hunt. Now, I did watch that episode. You had posted it to your YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
And now y'all were down there. Y'all were on a ranch, wasn't y'all?
Yep. 30 minutes south of Tulsa.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. and you ended up sticking a really nice hog out there.
Yeah, I was pretty stoked when I went with my buddy Alex, and he's a relatively new hunter that I got into it about 4 years ago, I think 4 or 5 years ago. But when we were going down, I told him, I said, man, I really want to shoot just like a spotted hog, like a color phase hog. And he's like, well, you know, he said they have them and stuff. And I had never done a high fence hunt, and I had a very different perspective on high fence hunting until I went and did that. But I had never done one before. But the way I looked at it is hogs, they're nuisance animals anyways. I don't mind going and killing in a fence. And when we got there, that is some of the most fun I have had. We had an absolute blast. And I shot, last day we had to hunt 15 minutes before they were pulling me out of the stand for the evening. And I had that color face hog run by, and I shot it at 12 yards, quartering away from me. It ran 27 feet, I think, and died.
So what setup? I'm about to start getting into, you know, kind of more of what I'm wanting to talk to you about, which is, you know, a lot of the content that you make, you know, talking about broadhead reviews and stuff. But what was your setup for the listeners? What was your setup that you were using? Bows, arrows?
So that was a Bowtech Realm X, 70 pounds, 28 inches, shooting a Victory Rip Extreme Velocity, 23.4% FOC. Total arrow weight was like 554 grains. The broadhead was a Black Widow Innovations Recluse, and it was shooting at like 263 feet a second.
So you're saying you wasn't using the sling blade?
Nope.
I'm pretty sure it's been a while, but I'm pretty sure it was you that I saw talking about on TikTok, the sling blade, the 4-inch cut diameter.
Yeah, man. So the sling blade was actually the video on TikTok that blew me up. I had like 540 something followers on TikTok. I posted that sling blade video. It ended up getting 400,000 views, and I jumped up to like 29,000 followers in a day and a half. Yeah. And then I was like, well, that worked. So I started posting other broadhead reviews, and broadhead reviews are really my bread and butter on there. But I like to educate and teach new people things. And I also like to, you know, get on there and dabble with some jokes and stuff too.
Well, sure. You know, I mean, what's the point of being so serious if you can't have a little bit of fun?
Exactly. Now, I will say about that sling blade, I was not overwhelmed with the performance except for the giant cut. And I'll tell you this, it's not a durable broadhead, but I really think you're not going to find a better turkey broadhead on the market, period.
Really?
Yeah, dude. I mean, turkeys are tough animals to begin with. The nice thing about that 4-inch cut broadhead is I consider them tough animals because they have such a small lethal zone. You know, you're either shooting them in the head, or if you're shooting them in the body, you've got basically a softball to work with.
Right.
So the nice thing about that big old broadhead is it flies. For me, it flew like a field point out to 40 yards. And it's big enough cut that you can shoot them in the head and lop their head off, or you can shoot them in the body and you're going to do nasty stuff to them.
Right.
So,
well, yeah, it had a 4-inch cut diameter. I mean,
yeah.
That's a heck of a hole.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, the guy that owns that company is a super, super great dude. I mean, I bought those out of pocket, didn't tell the guy I was going to do a review on them, and that's 99.9% of my broadheads are like that. I buy them full price, no discounts, don't tell him I'm going to do a review, then after the review's over, I send it to him and kind of give him my thoughts on the broadhead. And he was, you know, despite me saying I don't really think this is something I would use for big game, and I told him that, he was super polite, super, super nice guy. And he sent me a bunch of pictures of big game they killed with it too, bears and whitetail and everything else. So I mean, it's not like it can't be used on big game. Right.
Well, you know, in my opinion, you know, so much of any head, it doesn't matter to me. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter. Let me rephrase this. I think so much of the importance is it comes to shot placement.
Yep.
I mean, you can stick just about any funky looking thing on there, shoot it through the right spot, and it's going to do what it's supposed to do.
One thing a lot of people don't realize is it only takes 7 inches of arrow penetration to truly be lethal to an animal. And you can get away with less, but to truly be lethal and pop both lungs, it takes 7 inches of arrow penetration. that's pretty easily achievable with almost any broadhead and any modern compound setup.
Right.
The big thing is just enough, and you can get into semantics here, and I've had this argument with many people, and I've had this argument with myself, but do you want to do just enough, or do you want to do more than enough? And for me, it's always more than enough.
More.
So
right.
when I'm advising people on setups and broadheads and anything of that nature, I'm always trying to set them up in a situation where I think they're going to have the highest likelihood of a complete pass-through.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and okay, so it's like you had mentioned a little bit about on one of your videos about why you do your testing the way you do it. And so it's like we all watch some of these other people testing out broadheads, and they're shooting them into like a center block, for instance. It's like, don't get me wrong, it's neat to see that happen. Like I used to shoot, I can't remember the exact details on them, but it was the Exodus. I believe it was the tri-blade and fixed blade. I loved it, and one of the selling points on it for me when I was newer to diving into different broadheads was the fact that I watched the guy up here at my local bow shop put that same broadhead through a piece of sheet metal 5 or 6 times and pulled it out, and that thing was still pretty stinking sharp.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, granted, he's not doing like a true edge test like what you've
Sure.
been doing with your machine or your little deal there, but you know, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm pretty sold. You know, damage is minimum, and if you can shoot through a piece of little steel sheet there, that's pretty impressive.
Yep.
You know, but you know, like I said, I heard you talking about it on TikTok. You know, so is that the reason why you've decided to kind of try it a little bit differently instead of shooting like into bricks? You know,
Yes.
You set it up the way you have.
Yeah. So if you go and look at some of my old videos, I have shot all kinds of things. I had a short stint where I had a section called the Pan of Death, and it was a cast iron pan. I've shot laptops. I've shot steel belted tires. I have shot concrete blocks. I've shot 2x4s. I mean, I have run the gambit of you name it. I've probably tried to shoot it or at least thought about it. And I realized that as much as those are fun, and it is absolutely fun, they're a spectacle. They don't really teach anybody anything. And what really bothers me more than anything is you're putting a broadhead through things that it would never even remotely go through in the real world. And there is definitely merit to saying this broadhead went through all of this hell and still survived. The problem is a lot of really good broadheads that are plenty lethal are going to not survive that. And then you have issues with people going to the woods with gear that they may not be confident in. And the number one key to being lethal in the woods is confidence. And it's not, and this goes back into the saving people money thing. For everybody, it's not so easy as to just say, well, go buy another pack of broadheads. I have met many of people who cannot just afford to go spend $40 on another pack of broadheads.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I have one particular instance that comes to mind is a gentleman that I met and was helping him. He's new, got into hunting because he was a single dad and he was trying to figure out a way to put more meat in the freezer. He had 3 daughters and he was struggling. And, you know, bought a bow from a pawn shop for $50. I helped him get that squared away. And he had some old broadheads that were not worth a crap. And, you know, I was sending him options for good replacements. And he's like, well, I'll have to wait for a little bit and save up some money because, and he's the one that really opened my eyes to the fact that people can't just afford to go out and buy a $40 pack of broadheads. Because he's like, I'll probably have to wait a month or two until I can save up to get that. And and that's when it kind of dawned on me. I ended up sending him a pack of extra broadheads I had. And, but it's, I don't, like I said, the problem with those tests is the standard broadhead is not going to survive being shot into a cinder block 5 times and a steel plate 5 times. But that same broadhead you could take in the woods tomorrow and kill an animal perfectly lethally, pass through, runs 30 yards and dies.
Right. And then you still have a good workable broadhead. Yeah.
And you know what? Even if that broadhead's junk, it still did its job. The animal's still dead. And you have 3 to 5 more, depending on what broadhead you choose and how many are in the pack. You know, it's ultimately it depends on what you're wanting out of your setup. And like I said, there's definitely validity to broadheads going through all that stuff and surviving, and then that translating over in the fact that it's a super durable broadhead.
Definitely,
but it's just not realistic. And again, my number one thing is I want people going in the woods confident with their setup. And also, I have noticed that there is, and it's not the reviewers that are doing this, but I've noticed in some of the comment sections on some of those videos, you're starting to get a little bit of elitism with people choosing those broadheads, and that bothers me a lot. I do not deal with elitism well at all.
I totally understand that. As a matter of fact, we had just shot a podcast a couple days ago. We have not aired it yet, but talking about controversy within the outdoor industry, and that was the topic: elitism or the elites. Talking about that being honestly a weak point in the outdoor industry.
Huge one. Huge one. And I mean, I jumped into the outdoor industry at 16 years old. I started hunting at 13. So 3 years in, I jumped into the industry and started a channel and started a YouTube channel and started a team with the intention of creating a TV show. As a 16-year-old kid, you will not believe how many people wanted to take advantage and stab me in the back.
Absolutely. And it's sad, ain't it?
It's horribly sad. And I learned a lot. I've learned a lot about the industry and from just all of my time in it now. But the level of elitism and untrustworthiness is terrible. On the industry side is more of the untrustworthiness, and the elitism is more of the consumer side, and both of it just makes me very sad. Right.
Oh, and it is very sad. Talking with people, we've had several. When I say success stories, I had mentioned earlier, talking about getting people involved in this industry because they've watched either our content or somebody else's content, and they say, we want to try that, we want to live that. But then the moment they go out there and try, oh, you shot that turkey and you were sitting in a ground blind and you used a shotgun, well, you're not a real hunter. I'm like, come on, why can't people just sit there and be excited for somebody that's doing something that they find enjoyable? They're wanting to dive into this. Just be excited for them.
Yeah, man, and it's a big gatekeeper to hunting. And more than ever, we need to be welcoming people into this world of ours and growing the community because it's going to continue to be more under attack the more that society develops. And I say that with air quotes. New Jersey killed their bear season. Washington last year this spring killed their bear season. Now there's people in New Jersey getting attacked by bears. I cover this in one of my TikToks. I have a handful of friends that live in New Jersey, and they are having regular bear sightings, and there are bear attacks happening there and encounters happening there that aren't even making news. I mean, these are people living this situation. I have a friend in Washington talking about that. He had read a story or told me about a story the other day of a hiker getting attacked by a black bear, and black bear are not generally speaking aggressive animals.
No, people aren't typically on their list.
Yeah, it's not a grizzly. A grizzly will eat you.
Right.
But black bears are not usually like that. So we need to be doing everything we can to open the gates and tear down the walls and destroy the elitism and everything else to allow and welcome people into our community right now. And that's another reason I do the budget thing, because one of the big gatekeepers that we can't control necessarily as consumers is the price of entry.
Right.
That's why I'm shooting a bow this year that you can go buy a full kit with the bow for $250. And that's still expensive, but compared to $1,200, that's not. And you can go to a pawn shop and buy a bow for $50. And I promise you I can help you build a setup with that, help you pick out an arrow setup and a broadhead setup that is going to make that bow plenty lethal for you to take it in the woods.
Right. Well, and and there's something to be said, I'm going to take I'm not going to say his name, but I have a friend of mine who is basically like what you're talking about. He can't afford to go out and buy even a nice bow for that matter. Yeah. But when he goes out, he went out and he did buy, and I want to say he bought this bow for like $65. It was a, oh my goodness, an Oneida. Ooh, I can't remember which one. Anyways, it's an older bow.
Yeah.
But, I'm sure you're familiar with the Oneidas.
Probably a Strike Force.
It was either the Strike Force or it was the maybe the Screaming Eagle, maybe.
Okay. Yep.
Anyways, he went out there and bought that thing. Of course, it's an older bow,
Sure.
and it's not going to it's not going to test out like what some of these newer bows are testing out today. But that guy has gone out, and I've gone out with him, and I've actually watched him use this bow to harvest animals, and he's doing it successfully because he's out. He doesn't have the best setup in the world. He doesn't have the best sights. He doesn't shoot the best arrows or the best broadheads. Usually, it's the cheapest Walmart brand, but he's out there practicing constantly with that bow, and he's getting the job done.
Yeah, you don't need the most expensive stuff in the world. And that's another thing I push, and that's why I say all the time, shoot your budget. You don't have to have the nicest stuff in the world, and part of the reason I'm shooting the bow I am this year is because I want to show people that, generally speaking, I shoot a top of the line flagship bow that I've got probably close to $1,500 sunk into at minimum by the time I'm done setting up. And I do that because it's my obsession. It's because it's what I love, not because I have to have it or because you have to have it. But right. I want to show people, and I don't ever want anybody to be ashamed because they can't afford the best stuff. It makes me sad to think anybody would feel that way. Like you said with your buddy, he's shooting a budget setup and he's getting the job done. And I'll tell you something else that's cool about those Oneidas. They are probably the best bow in the world when it comes to efficiency for heavy arrows. You can get better speed numbers out of those bow with a heavy arrow than you can most any modern compound. So that's a nice kind of cool little thing about them. But yeah, man, you don't have to have the best stuff in the world.
No, absolutely not. And, kind of talking about the Oneidas down here, where in the area that I'm at, when we see those Oneidas, when we see those Screaming Eagles and the Strike Force, and even taking the Ospreys, that style of bow, typically we see those more in the realm of down here of bow fishing rather than we do actually hunting. And like you said, because bow fishing, you are launching a heavy arrow with a heavy piece of metal on the end of it to shoot through the water and to hit a fish.
Yeah. Solid fiberglass arrow. Most of those arrows are 800 plus grains easily. And just the Oneidas are so good because they're so dang efficient with the heavy arrow.
Right. And I have an old Screaming Eagle myself, and I'm not gonna lie, that's exactly how I have it rigged up for bow fishing. And I've got a couple of other. I went to the pawn shop and I picked up a couple of little $30-$40 compound bows, so that way when I have people that want to go bow fishing with me, they have something that they can shoot. But I do believe that especially the older Oneidas, I think people look at them and I guess this is going back and more to the elitist side of things, but I think people look at that and they say, no, that's not the brand new Matthews V3. That's not the new Bowtech. You need to upgrade your setup. When in all reality, there's actually no need to upgrade the setup if it's working. Don't fix what ain't broken.
That's exactly right, and that goes for literally any equipment, not only your bow, but your arrows, your broadheads. I mean, that goes for your release, your sights, the whole shebang. If it's working for you, don't change anything. And that's advice I give quite a bit, and the reason I give that advice is because I went through a time where I was tinkering so much it almost ruined archery for me. It was about 4 years ago, and I was tinkering so much with my arrow setup and my broadheads and my releases and my tunes on my bows and my equipment. It got so frustrating because I could not get anything to do what I wanted it to do that I almost just sold everything and put it down and quit. I've very much, the last 2 years especially, dedicated myself to getting back to basics. I just released a tuning video on YouTube, and I had somebody message me, and they're like, I expected more out of that tuning video. I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, well, it just seems like there's a lot of other things you could have done to make a more effective tune. I'm like, well, what's more effective than proper broadhead flight to 60 yards? I mean, how much more effective do I need to be? My bow can outshoot me. That's all I need it to do.
Right.
So, and not to mention, I'm trying to make these videos for people that are new, that are trying to learn to do stuff themselves. And if I start throwing in walk back tuning and French tuning and bear shaft tuning and yoke tuning and all of these things on top of just what really is basic and necessary, it gets way confusing.
Sure. Well, and typically speaking, when you're talking about somebody new that's never done this kind of stuff before, kind of like maybe, talking about like your story, you didn't know nothing about it. You saw somebody shoot the deer, you ran to your parents' room and you said, I want a bow. In a similar situation, you didn't know what that stuff was starting out.
No. No. If somebody would have said, hey, man, you need to walk back tune that, I'd have said, what?
Well, what are you talking about?
My first bow I got was a Bear Buckmaster BTR. It was a bow that was adjustable from 28 inches to 30 inches in draw and from 50 to 70 pounds. And when I got it, I didn't know anything about how to adjust anything, change draw weight, none of that. So I was trying at 13 years old, and I'm not a tall guy, I'm 5'10". At 13 years old, I was probably 5'2", 5'3" maybe, who knows? But I did not have a 30-inch draw length. I was trying to draw a 70-pound bow with my fingers, mind you, at 30 inches. I couldn't even get the bow back.
No.
I remember grabbing that bow. I got that bow for Christmas. I couldn't draw it back. And of course, my dad didn't know anything about bows or anything like that. So neither of us knew anything about adjusting it or doing anything to make it easier. And I remember every night for probably 3.5 months, I would take my bow and I would try to draw it back 10 times. And after about 3.5 months of that, I finally got the bow at 30 inches at 70 pounds drawn back.
Oh, man.
And I was so excited that I didn't dry fire the bow, but I let down and I slammed the guide rod into my hand and gashed the crap out of my hand. I mean, I didn't know any better.
Right. Well, and that kind of comes with the idea of you're learning, you're new, you're just trying to do it. You don't you may not necessarily know exactly what it is, but you're trying to do it. I shot competition when I was younger. Let's see, I guess I started at the age of 8 shooting in some competitions, and I had the original Matthews solo cam when solo cam started getting really popular. I had the original one, the bright red one that they advertised everywhere. Yeah, I still to this day I own it. It's my very first bow. There ain't no way I'm getting rid of it, But I shot that, and I was actually in the middle of a competition. And I'll never forget it because when it happened, it didn't make sense to me as to why everybody was freaking out. But, now growing up, I can understand it. But I had drawn back, and I guess I had really overextended. And when I did, that arrow actually came back past the rest and slid down. And when I let pressure off, it landed right above my hand against the rest.
Yeah.
And of course they were all freaking out. Oh, no, like don't pull it back. Don't do nothing, And like I said, back then I didn't realize it, but now, I was like, okay, yeah, I could have actually gotten hurt,
That bear, I had a prong rest on, the metal prong rest. That's what I had on that bear. My first deer I ever shot, I shot with that bow, and I drew back and was shaking so hard from the adrenaline, the arrow fell off the rest. And I had gotten so used to that arrow coming off the rest that I had trained myself how to put it back up on the rest with my finger.
Yeah.
And it fell off the rest, and I just put it back up on the rest and shot the deer. I shot that first deer. That's a wild story, man. That first deer I shot with a broadhead that probably nobody's ever heard of, called an Extra Clean Kill. It was a 3-blade, 3-inch mechanical broadhead. The company wasn't around for very long at all. But I was shooting, I should not have been shooting a broadhead anywhere close to that. But I got that broadhead sent to me from the owner of the company. I met him on a forum called Broadhead Talk. And like I said, a 3-inch, 3-blade cut mechanical that I had no right to be shooting. But I double lunged her. She ran 70 yards and died. I mean, it worked out. It was just, it's a case of 7 inches of penetration is about all I got.
Right. Well, the first animal, I guess for me, it doesn't matter, in my opinion, I guess it doesn't matter if it's the deer, the turkey, a rabbit, or whatever the case may be. That first animal with a bow, man, that's an adrenaline rush.
Yep.
And that's actually, I'm a turkey hunter. I grew when we moved to Oklahoma, like I told you earlier about seeing those turkey for the first time. I'm more of a turkey hunter than I am a deer hunter. Now, granted, I deer hunt because we shoot we usually shoot 4 to 5 deer a year to fill up our freezers, and that's actually unless we're going out to eat or something, or we're on the road buying fast food or something, like, we don't buy meat. I mean, we get to eat what we kill, catch, and grow, and so I deer hunt for that reason. But turkey hunting, that's where my passion is. That's where my oh my goodness, I love hearing them turkeys spout off. Especially, don't get me wrong, the fall season is fun, but that early spring season, hearing them birds spout off at the very first thought of daylight, that just gets my heart to pounding. But I've always shotgun hunted for them up until last year. When I did buy my new bow, I told my buddy, I was like, you know what? I've never shot a turkey with a bow. I've always gone with a shotgun. So this year we're gonna get it. I'm gonna get out there with my bow. I'm gonna get my first kill with the bow, and or my first turkey kill, I should say, with a bow, and we're gonna record it. And oh my goodness, I tried to keep my composure. I tried to. Because I was actually with the landowner, my buddy and his dad, and I was trying to keep my composure as decently professional as I could, but there was a big part of me, I was geeking out like crazy because of what I had just got the opportunity to do. And I've been hunting since I was just a kid. So, it's always exciting.
Yeah, you're better than me, man. I can't keep my composure when I shoot an animal. I don't have it in me. The one exception, the one time I can be semi-composed is if I'm not 100% confident in my shot, and it's not even composure as much as it is heart-wrenching and gut-wrenching, trying to figure out if I actually made a good shot and killed an animal. But I can't. I mean, I'll shoot a doe and I'll get just as excited as if it was a 220-inch absolute giant. I mean, it makes no difference to me.
Yep. Well, my wife has she's watched me shoot a doe, and then, we give it time to expire. And she has literally watched me skip to my Lulu, skip to my... Yep. She's literally watched me skip over there because of, like what you're saying, the excitement. And, I believe there's a big part of hunting where that's not seen, and it needs to be seen.
Yeah, it's funny. And this is an internal struggle I have a little bit, but it seems like the reality of hunting isn't very well shown for what I consider to be mass media, and not like news and stuff, but I mean like hunting shows.
Right.
The big hunting shows, that's not real hunting. And one thing I'm really dedicated to on my YouTube channel is I film my hunts, but I want it to be real. I mean, there are a lot of hunts I filmed last year. I did not get a shot at a deer. I didn't see a deer. It's just the reality of hunting on public land.
Yes.
But at the same side, it seems like there's almost a movement where people need to be ashamed of being excited for something they kill.
Sure.
And I get it. It's because we want to have a positive public perception to people that aren't hunters or anti-hunters. And I fully support that. At the same time, that's not reality. If you're the type of person that goes out and shoots an animal, bow, gun, whatever, and doesn't get excited about it, you should probably stop hunting in that manner, at least, if not altogether. The day I am no longer excited to take an animal, I will put down the bow and I will never pick it up ever again, because that is part of it, and there's other emotional stuff going on for me, at least. There's a little bit of sadness because there's a certain weight to taking a life. At least for me, it's a very interesting and spiritual situation. I mentioned earlier my friend Alex that I kind of got into hunting. He had a situation where the third deer he had ever shot, he didn't put a great shot on, and I met with him after he texted me and said, hey, I shot a deer, and the deer had run up a hill and hadn't expired. He put a gut shot on it, but it had run up the hill and bedded down. I think it was liver guts. And he told me where it was, and we kind of looked up the hill, and I was like, well, we got to finish it off. So we went up to the deer, and he put 2 more arrows in it to finish it off. And at 15 yards away, he got to sit there and actually watch the deer expire. And you want to talk about a absolute sobering experience. I mean, I've been hunting long enough, and I've killed enough deer that I've seen it up close, and it's still not any easier. But one thing that made me really proud of him, and one thing that made me very, I want to say, comfortable and introducing him to hunting, was his reaction. And I mean, he was torn up about it.
Sure. Well, and that shows a legitimate, compassionate side of people that oftentimes isn't seen. And I believe, and I'm talking as a content creator right here, it was a couple years ago, I had shot a deer with my rifle, and she dropped straight down. I looked at her through my scope. She wasn't moving. It was about a 75-yard shot. Walked up to her, and she was still kicking. And of course, I looked back to the person that was filming for me at the time, and I was like, it's brutal, but, you know, we don't have to film the whole thing. We don't have to sit there and gawk at it because we don't want the wrong impression to be made. But in the same breath, it is a part of hunting. And people that have that compassion, you know, that feeling for it, you know, if it's not there, to me, there's something wrong.
Yeah, I mean, and same as you as a content creator, I'm hypercritical of other content creators, and that's sometimes to a fault, but it's particularly hunting videos. Sure. There are content creators and channels and stuff like that. I absolutely refuse to watch anything they post because at one point I've watched a hunt where they shot a deer in the spine and just filmed it kick until it expired, and they never put another arrow in it. They never did. Or they shot a deer in the spine and it flashes away from the deer falls, it kicks a little bit, and then it flashes over and they're talking about how they absolutely just nailed that deer and they pinwheeled it. And I'm going to tell you right now, you do not shoot a deer with a bow and it drops. If it did that, you spined it and you need to put another arrow in it and finish it off. But there are content creators, like I said, there are people that I will specifically not watch their content because I saw that once. And again, I'm being hypercritical, but to me, that is something very important.
It is.
And it goes back to, first off, compassion. And I understand you're excited in the moment, but you have to be able to keep your head enough to think cognitively of what's going on.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, I'm going to revert back to my wife. She's actually one of the co-hosts on Outdoor Genetics, Michelle. We had a target buck that came on camera. I actually hunted for his father for five seasons and never once got the opportunity. And the one time I had the opportunity, we were at the zoo. But, you know, when his son came onto camera pre-season, I looked at Michelle and I was like, wait a minute. And I started comparing side-by-sides of them. And we firmly believe, I guess we can't actually prove it, but, you know, looking at side-by-side comparisons over the years from his dad to him, it's got to be his son kind of thing. I know we can't prove it necessarily, but we do say it's his son.
Sure.
And I'll never forget when she shot him. She shot him with a muzzleloader, and he dropped, spun, kicked, and for a split second you can see that happen. Mm-hmm. And then I take the camera and I put it on Michelle. And Michelle is in shock. She is in straight up like, did this really, like, you literally in the camera, you can see her look like, am I dreaming? And then she turns the camera and immediately tears start falling down her face. And I didn't, there was a part of me that didn't want to post that because I didn't want to embarrass her. But the other side of that is the reality of it. She had so many emotions, mixed emotions going on between, like you said, happiness. There is a form of sadness. There's a weight that comes with taking another life. And she expressed it so beautifully. I told her, I was like, look, if you don't want me to share that part, I won't. But this is the reality of it.
And to me, that response is something to be proud of. I mean,
absolutely.
Content like that, that's the type of stuff I watch. That's the type of stuff I love because it is reality. I mean, and it's beautiful. It's exactly the type of response you should have.
And you're absolutely right. And I'm not just trying to brag on our stuff, but that's from any content creator, you know.
Yeah.
When you follow somebody and they've shared their story on how they've spent the last 6 months out there in the woods setting up summer plots where legal, but summer plots, and they've done their time scouting and they followed this buck and they've seen this buck, they've hunted for the buck for the last 2 years, ain't been able to shoot him, and then this year's the magic year and it happens for them. And then when that flood of emotions happen, it's so raw, it's so real. You can't script it. If you can script it, you're a really good actor, but there's such a realness to it. And I think what is appealing to a lot of people that are not in the outdoor industry, they look at that and they look at it in a way of saying, that is something that I have never experienced that I want to.
Yep. Yeah. There's a level of purity and honesty that comes with the pursuit of game and the taking of game that I really don't think is available in many other avenues. They're just there's something there that I don't think we can get many other places, if any at all.
Right. Well, and I think that's a lot of times why smaller content creators, I think that's a lot of times why they do so well with their content, and that's because there is the reality side of it. Like you said earlier, these bigger names, when you watch these things on TV and stuff, all you're seeing is the kill shot. All you're seeing is the exciting part. That's all you're seeing.
Yep.
You don't get to witness the rest of it. They might show a little bit of the excitement there as they're walking up to it, but you're not getting their story.
Yeah, and one thing that kind of ruined hunting shows for me is getting involved in the industry and at a young age and learning and talking to people. A lot of that stuff is staged and reshot and rescripted,
Yeah.
and to get the perfect angle and to make sure it looks perfect. And a lot of times they go and find that deer and they stage it before they ever go and find the deer on TV. And
Yep.
I get it. I wholeheartedly get it, because there is a level of at that level of producing content, there is a required amount of quality that you cannot just fly by the seat of your pants and make.
Right.
Especially when you have sponsors paying you tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to make their commercials basically for them.
Right.
I
They're
totally
relying
get
on
it.
you to get those shots.
Exactly. So I totally get it, but there is a level of disingenuous. It's disingenuous. That's a big word, a mouthful I couldn't get spit out, but it's disingenuous to me, and I lost a lot of my love for outdoor television when I learned those things.
Right.
And don't take that wrong either. The guys that are making a living doing that TV show, I mean, they're living my dream. That's the reason I started a YouTube channel, is because I wanted to be a TV show eventually, which is now
Right.
reverted back to just wanting to do social media and YouTube. But they're living my dream, and it's not a knock on them. They have to make a living. I fully get it, but to me,
Right.
that's just not how I want to do it.
Right. Well, I mean, like the old saying goes, it's a cliche saying, but it takes all types of people to make the world go round.
It's a fact.
And kudos to them for being able to do it. But like you said, we used to have all the cable channels to where I could watch the outdoor channel and all
Yep.
all the hunting channels. And growing up, it was always interesting. But as I got, kind of like what you're saying, as I got older, I fell in love with the idea of smaller content creators because I relate to them.
Yep.
The truth of the matter is I don't get to go hunt all these other states on big, huge trophy ranches where they can pick and choose. Oh no, that's only 160 inch. I want 180 or bigger.
Yeah. Yeah, and and the reality for me, I don't know about you, but the reality is I probably never will get the chance to do those things, which is fine.
Mm-mm.
To be honest with you, I'm at the point where I public land is my mistress. Like, I love public land. I love the added challenge. And I would just as soon go do a DIY public land hunt in another state than go to, a trophy ranch. If you were to tell me that, hey, I come out to Wyoming, we'll say, and hunt this 15,000 acre ranch, and you can elk hunt here, and there's trophy elk, or come out to Wyoming and let's do a DIY backpack hunt, I'm probably going to pick the backpack hunt on the public ground, because to me it's more of an adventure, and that's ultimately what I'm in it for, is the
Sure.
adventure.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and okay, so don't get me wrong. I have done a little bit of trophy hunting myself. And don't get me wrong, it's cool. I now have a couple of trophies that I can hang up on my wall and say, I love this. This is cool. But you do not get the experience from doing that, like what you're talking about, going out there and doing that DIY backpack trip. You're roughnecking it. When we went to Colorado to go on an elk hunt up there, we went in on four-wheelers as far as we could go up legally. We got off the four-wheelers, and then we had to haul everything else in on foot, tents, wood-burning stove, and we stayed up there for, I believe it was 9 days.
Yeah.
And, you know, you don't get that experience. I'm not going to say the trophy hunting experience isn't fun. I'm just saying you don't get the same experience that you get from doing that. You know, not everybody and their dog can go out there and claim, yeah, you know what, I went out there and did that hunt and was successful. Or whether you shoot something or not, I see it as success for the fact that you were able to go and do it and get back. That's success in my part. I don't consider shooting an animal the successful part. But the fact that you can make those memories, you can have that experience, or at least in my opinion, that is what separates somebody that has that true love for adventure compared to just the true love for a trophy.
Sure, yeah, and I mean...
Does that make sense?
It makes a ton of sense, because I don't disagree with you in the slightest. And don't get me wrong either. If you are the type of guy that just has a love for the trophy, that's fine. There's nothing in the world wrong with that.
No, not at all.
If that's your thing, more power to you. That's just not what I'm in it for. And, you know, something I don't get as much heat for it now, but on TikTok, when I first started blowing up and getting bigger and growing, I always had a ton of people, let's see all the trophies on your wall. Mm-hmm. I don't have any. I don't keep trophies. I have no interest in hanging a deer head on my wall. I don't have any interest. The first trophy of any kind I ever got was my hog skull. I had a European mount done, and I still haven't picked that up from the taxidermist. Actually, I just remembered I need to go do that. But that's the first trophy I've ever had, and probably I wouldn't be surprised if it's the only trophy I ever had, because to me, I film most of my hunts. So first off, I have the memory there. Yep. I totally get that it's cool decor, and me being an outdoorsman, I totally understand that fact. But ultimately for me, it comes back down to being broke and being a guy that doesn't like to spend a lot of money. And to get a good deer mount around here is $500. Well, that's $500 I can spend on broadheads. I can spend on arrows. Heck, I can shop around. That's another bow. I mean, that's a third of a trip out to Colorado to hunt elk. I mean, there's just so many other things I would rather spend that money on. And the trophy at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me, because I've got the memories. I've got the video usually to follow it. You know, not that a lot of people, I just feel like a lot of trophies are to show off to other people, and I just don't care that much about it. Not to mention, I'm a meat hunter. I mean, I would be just as good off framing a backstrap on the wall, because to me, that's the trophy.
Right,
you know, and I've killed a handful of bucks. I've not killed anything giant, but that's also why I'm very careful to not proclaim I'm a big buck hunter. You know, I only took trophy hunting on public lands serious for 2 years. The second year, I had 5 different encounters with bucks over 140 inches, and I blew them all. So, I mean, I feel like if I really dedicated my time to it, I could kill some good bucks, but it's just not what I'm out there for. I'm there for the meat. I'm there for the adventure. I mean, honestly, there's times I've watched deer walk past me and just to watch the deer.
Yeah.
It's just not what I'm there for. Now, if that's what you're there for, that's fine.
Right.
It's just not for me.
And I can say, I'm right there with you. I hunt every year for the last 12 years. I hunt opening day of deer season every year. Now, granted, like I said, when it comes to the passion side, I'm more of a turkey hunter. But, I mean, I still love deer. I love deer hunting. Sure. I love every aspect of it. But I've not missed a single day in the last 12 years. Opening day of season, I hunt every single year. And out of all 12 years, I have yet to shoot a deer on opening day. And it's not because they didn't show up, or I was in the wrong place or at the wrong time, or because I blew the shot. It's because of simply what you said a minute ago. Being able to sit back and watch the deer. No, I didn't shoot one. Was you successful? Yeah, I had 3 walk in front of me right as soon as I got there, and then I had another buck come in, and then a doe, and last year's fawn came in, and yeah, it was a good trip. But you didn't shoot nothing? Nope, sure didn't. But it was a lot. I had just as much fun. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's just everybody's in it, and everybody's in it for different things. And I think something Steven Ranella, which if for some reason you're not familiar with that person, I'm sure you are, but as a listener, if you're not familiar with that, he's the owner, proprietor of Meat Eater, and it's somebody you should definitely check out. I like Steve Ranella a lot. I like a lot of the stuff he stands for. But anyways, he has mentioned, and where I heard it at least, was there's like 3 or 4 stages to every hunter, and it's like that new hunter that shoots everything that walks out in front of them.
Yes.
And then it's like the hunter that has learned now, and they're a little bit more particular, but they're still kind of shooting everything. And then you go to the big buck hunter phase, and then you get to the stage where you just really enjoy being in the woods. And I'm at that 4th stage, and that's not to say I won't revert maybe and go back to the big buck hunter stage at some point. But for me now, it's so much about just being in the woods and loving it. And I mean, wouldn't trade it for anything.
Oh no, definitely not. Definitely not. And you know, it goes back ultimately to, you know, beauty lies within the eye of the beholder. You know,
absolutely.
You know, I'm totally for anybody. If you want to shoot a spike, that's fantastic. You know, we're primarily talking about deer hunting here, but if you want to shoot a spike, that's fantastic. If all you want to shoot is a doe, that's fantastic. If you want to shoot a trophy, that's fantastic. I'm going to be happy for you either way. But what makes me excited is that no matter, kind of like what you're talking about with Stephen Ella talking about the 4 stages, no matter what stage you're in, the fact that you're out there doing it and you have a love and a passion for it, that is what is so huge and important.
Yep, exactly. And that's exactly what it is. You have to fall in love with being out there. And if you're not falling in love with being out there, maybe adjust the way you're doing it. And if you're still not, maybe it's not for you. And that's the other thing too. I think I've met some people in my, we'll call it outdoor journey, that I think are just going outside and hunting because it's what their dad did, it's what their grandpa did, or it's what, you know, somebody they know did, or maybe that's what the guys at school do, so they do it.
Sure.
And I'm more than happy to have you out in the woods if that's your motivation. That's fine. But at the same time, I think a lot of people just don't feel obligated, I guess is the best thing I can say. Because I think my fear is that eventually you'll grow up and you'll have a disdain for it and you could potentially pass that on. Whereas I would much rather have somebody that's impartial to hunting than somebody that doesn't like it.
Right.
You know, from a hunter's perspective, that's the way I look at it is if you grew up doing it because, we'll say, dad did it and he took you all the time, and you grew up and end up hating it, you're going to talk poorly about it, even if there's not anything necessarily wrong with it. And I would much prefer you just say, I don't care one way or the other, than to say, no, I hate it, it's boring.
Right. Well, you know, so many people, I mean, that happens, I think, more than what people realize. And go ahead.
I know I was agreeing with you. I agree completely. I think that happens a lot more than people realize. Perks of living next to train tracks.
That's all right. But go ahead.
Yeah, so you're a turkey hunter primarily, huh?
That's me, primarily turkey hunting. You know, it's just so much fun.
I've not been able to get into it. I don't see it, man.
Oh, for me, it is the cat and mouse game, especially. Okay, so this year here in Oklahoma kicked my butt because they pushed our season 2 weeks out. So not only do we have birds that are acting different because it's later in the season, we have the terrain is changing, all the wheat fields are growing up, and now me personally, when it comes to turkey hunting, I'm a field hunter. I love watching those birds come down a tree line or across a field, strutting, whether they're, I just love it. I mean, it's just so captivating.
Yeah.
But this year, you know, turkeys, they actually start breeding before season ever starts. So, you know, our season last year started April 6th, and, you know, we were in there about midway, you know, through when they first started breeding. And that, to me, is the exciting time of year, because that's when those birds are aggressive. That's when those boss hens are most talkative. And if you can't get a tom in, if you can call in a boss hen, you're going to get a tom to come in. You know, I mean, she's going to be sitting there talking up a storm. It's going to bring a bird from somewhere to you, you know. And this year they pushed it out 2 weeks further out, and it shut me down because I am that early season hunter. There, just the aggressiveness of the turkeys, whether it's the hens or the toms, come early season. That is my bread and butter.
Yeah, and to be fair, part of the reason I've probably not gotten super into it is I've never put a bunch of stock into it, nor have I ever been successful. I've killed more turkeys because our fall turkey season here for archery lines up with our deer season perfectly. I've killed one turkey in my entire life. It was during deer archery season, and I happened to be walking to my stand after lunch, and the turkey walked out in front of me at like 27 yards, and I shot it. I'm like, well, that's cool. I mean, so it's not like, it's not like I went out and said, and I for the last 2 years I've drawn, because in Illinois we have to draw tags. Sure. The last 2 years I've drawn and I've went out, but I've just not put too much into it. It's just not, I don't know. I've decided next year I'm going to really put stock into it. I'm going to go out and scout. I'm going to do it right. I'm going to really try to kill a turkey and see if I can't get into it. But I mean, I learned to call and all that stuff. I can do all that stuff. It's never really drawn me in like deer hunting. And I'll tell you, deer hunting isn't even actually my favorite. My favorite is pheasant.
Oh man, now that's something I've yet to be able to do, but it is definitely one of the things on my list to do.
That is, pheasant hunting for me is very much a, born from listening to my dad tell stories about when he was a kid, and my grandpas tell stories about when they were kids. And I mean, so for me, that is a labor of love more than it is. I mean, that passion is drawn from family and stories and the connection there, more so than like deer hunting is born from just the challenge aspect and learning it myself.
Right. Well, and I've been told oftentimes, you get out there, it's from what I've been told, like I said, I've never been, but talking to people that have been, sure. Typically they're going to go out in a group of 2 or 3, maybe 4 guys. They're lined up. It's kind of like duck hunting. It's very social. And on top of that, eating them, I've been told, is phenomenal.
I will eat a pheasant over a chicken 10 out of 10 days, dude. Pheasant is top of my list as far as wild game goes. I love pheasant so much, and quail is fantastic also. And yeah, I mean, there's a very strong social aspect to it that's fantastic and enjoyable, and it's like duck hunting in that aspect. I'll tell you, there's a heart-pounding aspect too. The first pheasant you ever kick up, and the first one of the season, I mean, heck, every year for me, the first one of the season, I about brown my drawers because they jump up under your feet and they're making noise and you're not expecting it, and it's just a rush, man. I love it. And then if you have a dog, I have a dog. She's retired now. She's old and got hip problems, but when you have a dog, watching those dogs work is just beautiful. It's something special, man. That whole situation, something special.
The way you explain that, talking about when the first bird of the season or your very first one ever, flies up from underneath you, you brown your drawers kind of thing. That's exactly how I explain that same exact feeling, but about noodling.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And you know what? To this day, I cannot tell you how many fish I have noodled. It is impossible for me to count how many fish that I have noodled over my lifetime. But every time I stick my hand in a hole, and I don't care if it's the first hole of the day or the last hole of the day, when I get bit, it's a shock. It's an adrenaline rush. I usually have a little squeal like a little kid, and that comes out of my mouth. But it's so exciting. It's just so much fun. And, granted, no, it's not the hardest type of fishing in the world to do, but it's still kind of like what you're saying, a labor of love. You're going out there and doing it. That's kind of how I feel about noodling on that aspect. But it's one of those things. It's social. It's fun. I benefit from the harvest, from the meat from it, and I don't know. But the way you said that, it took me straight to noodling. I'm like, man, that's exactly what I tell people about noodling.
Yeah. And I've done noodling once, one fish. Not that I wouldn't do it again. It's just not as popular around here. It's something special. And I mean, it was like probably a 4.5, 5 pound flathead. It was not a big fish by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a blast. First off, the only thing I could think when I was first sticking my hand in the hole is, you got to be some kind of idiot. You're going to come back missing a finger from a dang snapping turtle.
Yep.
And then I got bit, and I wasn't sure if it was a fish or I really lost a finger to a snapping turtle.
Oh, man.
So I instinctively yanked my hand out, Well, when I yanked, I closed my hand. I pulled the fish out by its bottom lip, just
trying to pull your hand out.
And the guy that, just instinctively pulling my hand out. And the guy that took me, he goes, well, we usually shoot for bigger ones than that. You won't be able to do that with a big one. A big one. And we all kind of chuckled and let that fish go. Apparently it was too small or whatever. I don't know. I kept trying to convince him I wanted to eat it.
Right.
But we let that fish go, and it was about, we were walking a creek doing it, and we were walking to the next hole, and a storm started to roll in, and he's like, well, we should probably get out of here. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to get struck by lightning, so
that's no fun.
And that's the only opportunity I've had to go. But man, it was a blast. And like you said, there was like 7 of us. We were just walking down the creek BSing and having a good time.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a blast. It was definitely something I would do again.
Oh man, I'm telling you, if you ever feel like making a trip down to Oklahoma this time of year and you want to go noodling, you just hit me up, because we go every single year. I mean, it's fantastic. My brother, a military vet, I took him out. He said, John, I want to. He had caught a few small fish at the time, but he was like, I want to catch my big fish while noodling.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, man. So I called up a buddy of mine, and I said, hey, we need to try to get on some big fish. Daniel wants to get on a big fish. He said, all right. So we get out there to the water, and we find this bank hole, a huge bank hole, and in the very back of that hole there's these 2 fish. I end up grabbing one, pulling it out. She ended up being, I think it was 46-pound flathead. And when he saw me pull that fish out, his eyes got the size of baseballs. I mean, he was just like, holy cow. And I looked at him and I said, there's another one in there, almost the same size. Go get it. And he looked at me and said, dude, okay. He didn't want to say no, because we were hanging out with the guys. He didn't want to seem like a little pansy.
Yep.
But he ended up telling me later, he's like, John, there was a part of me that wanted to say no after seeing you pull that thing out. That thing was huge. He goes, it was a little intimidating to see that.
Yeah, man. I mean, and these guys had shown me pictures of some of the fish they pulled out, and I think the year before their big one was like 37, and they were showing me pictures of these fish, and I like it. I mean, same thing. The one thing I was thankful for is most of the areas that we were going, I could stand up in the water and be above water.
Right.
So I wasn't, swimming down into a hole or anything. But I'm like, man, these fish are going to drown me. I know these things are strong. I've caught them on rod and reel before.
Oh, man. And I'm telling you, for me personally, I'm like that. I like to be where I can stand up and at least my neck be out of the water. But there has been several times we've gotten into some of those holes where we're swimming down 7-8 foot, and it's mildly terrifying. You think about holding your breath. If you think about holding your breath for even just 1 minute, that don't sound too bad. But then when you add the weight of the water, your adrenaline's going, your heart's pumping. Now you got a fish on the end of the end of your hand that you're trying to rip out of a hole that doesn't want to come out of the hole. It stacks up quick, and swimming down that deep. I mean, I've got friends that I have personally watched dive down, and they're literally getting up underneath a slab that's the size of a pickup truck, and they're swimming to the back of the slab, grabbing the fish, and then coming back out all on one breath. They're down there for a minute and a half, and that sounds crazy to think about, being underwater that long for just an average person, somebody that's not a diver, that's used to it, But, oh, man, it is...
Well, they got bigger jewels than I do, because there's no way. There's no way.
Oh, it's spooky when you get up underneath a rock and the size of, I'm going to say, like an ice box, and you grab that fish, and then that rock starts shaking because that fish is thrashing around so hard. They are incredibly strong creatures.
Yeah, man. I mean, that's me. My luck, I would dive down. It'd be the first slab I go under that's the size of a pickup truck, and I'd put my arm in like a 70-pound fish that can just throw me around like a rag doll, and it'd kill me. Like that's immediately where my head goes, and it's just, nah, I'll pass. Let me swim under there and then drop a bait in front of its face or something. Like, we can do that.
Right.
I'm cool with that. But and I mean, I'm no stranger to the water. I love the water, but there's just some things that I don't know.
Between that and then snake grabbing.
Oh, well, yeah, I've done that a bunch.
We love Oh man, that I don't know what it is about that. I think it's more fun than it is anything. But just going and it doesn't matter if we're in the creek or if we're in ponds or the lake. When we see those water snakes, it is game on.
Yep. I do garter snakes around here a lot. I tend to avoid the poison ones because, well, that just sounds like a bad trip to the ER. But
yes.
Garter snakes and everything else around here, I mean, I'll chase them all over my yard.
Oh, yeah.
and I mean, hognose are some of my favorite snakes because they play dead.
Those snakes crack me up.
Yep. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, they roll over and just play dead. No matter what you do, they just keep playing dead. Oh gosh, I'm so entertained, like a kid with a shiny nickel or something.
Oh, that's no joke. That's no joke. We actually had the opportunity to go. Have you ever watched the show? I'm sure you have. Swamp People.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Ashley Jones, the tall redheaded one on the show. We're actually decent friends with them. I'm good friends with them. We go noodling with them. They've come over here. They go turkey hunting with us. But we went and did the snake rodeo. We went over there to the snake rodeo with them. And let me tell you what, it blew me away. I thought there was like 5 people in the world that liked to go do that. And then we get over. We were out there noodling with her one time, and she goes, "John, would you be willing to grab a snake?" And about that time, we saw a snake swimming across the delta, and we were on the boat. And I said, "Yep, pull up to that snake right there." And sure enough, I reached down in the water and caught it. She's like, "Yeah, you need to come to the snake rodeo." And sure enough, there is a bunch of rednecks. Just crazy awesome people, but reaching down, grabbing snakes and pulling them up. And of course, like my wife, she is not a snake person at all. She don't do snakes. As a matter of fact, we had somebody message or get in contact with us wanting to do a podcast with us, and their thing is bald pythons. And
nice.
It was just like that's pretty stinking cool. My wife's like, that's kind of weird. Like, no, I'm out. Like, this must be a remote podcast. It's not going to be an in-person podcast. And I'm like, no, I want it to be an in-person podcast. That's what would make it awesome,
Yep.
But, well, man, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I do have just a couple more questions for you. Some things that
sure.
I actually had some people reach out to me, and they wanted these questions asked on this podcast. And the first one is going back to talking about shooting your budget, right? You had posted an episode a while back, I want to say coming up to 10 months ago, talking about the best budget setup or the best budget bow. Mm-hmm. I can't for the life of me remember, what was that setup?
So that is a Sanlita Dragon X8. Mm-hmm. Sanlita Archery. That's exactly what I'm shooting this year, actually, is that bow. It is a Chinese company. I'll say that right off the bat. The one thing I appreciate about them, though, is they're not ripping people off. So I'm very particular about broadhead reviews. I will not review Amazon knockoff broadheads. I will not do it. And the reason why is because I appreciate the fact that these are American companies. Even if their product is not made in the U.S., they are American companies employing American people. But at the same token, archery is not just a United States thing. This is a worldwide endeavor. Right. This is a worldwide thing we all love. So I'm not going to not include Chinese companies, Australian, German, any company from a foreign country if they're doing their own thing, and Sanlita is doing their own thing.
Right.
So Sanlita got in contact with me and reached out with me and sent me a bow to review. It's one of the few companies that have actually sent me some stuff, and they sent me a bow to review, and I was really impressed for the money you're paying, the entirety of everything you get in the kit, and honestly the performance of the bow is really solid for what it is. That's, again, it's what I'm shooting this year, and a big reason is to show you don't have to spend all of that money on a really high-end bow to still have something perfectly legal. That bow, I just did a video on this where I measured the speed of that bow, and it's a 429 grain arrow, is 250 feet a second at 29 inches at 70 pounds, which is more than enough.
Oh, yeah.
As long as you have a proper broadhead selection to kill anything in North America. much less a whitetail or a hog or something like that.
What
So
the majority of people are going for.
exactly. I mean, I would very comfortably take that bow and go kill a moose. I would just make a smart broadhead selection. And that's something a lot of people, part of the reason I focus so heavily on broadheads is the broadhead is the single most important piece of equipment when it comes to overall lethality of your setup.
Right.
So, yeah, but it's a San Lita Archery Dragon X8. If you find any of my socials or in that video, there's links where you can, if they were interested, they can get one for themselves.
Yeah, what was the actual name of that video that you uploaded? Do you remember?
It's the best budget bow setup ever or something like that, which is kind of a clickbaity title. That's on purpose. Sure. But, you know, it is really up there with a Bear or a Mission or anything else, and it's at a price that's a little less in most cases, if not extremely competitive with those products.
Right. And I mean, I'm doing this for our listeners here, for the ones that are wanting to get involved in this. Sure. Now they go to that link. There's a deal that they can put in, right? That benefits you, correct?
So basically, if you were to go to that video and click the link and order, that link automatically assigns that order to me, and I get a small, what's called affiliate commission. And I cover this in some of my videos, and a lot of my videos actually. So I use affiliate links as a methodology to help increase my income. And again, it's all rolls back into the business of buying more stuff to review. Right. And things like that. But affiliate links basically just give me a small commission. They don't cost the buyer anything at all extra. And it just helps the channel grow.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for those of you wanting to get involved in this, I would definitely recommend, like I said, I went and watched that video, and it came, now that setup, it came with a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, it comes with, it comes with a soft case, a bow sight, a rest, a release. It comes with a dozen arrows, which if you're a pulling higher poundage or longer draw weight or draw length, you're gonna need different arrows, and I cover all of that in the video. It comes with an arrow puller, it comes with a bow kickstand, it comes with all the Allen wrenches you would need to adjust stuff and mount stuff. I mean, it's really like everything you would ever need in setup. And if you're buying it for your significant other or your kiddo, a lot of times the arrows that come with it will even work for them.
Awesome. Well, guys, be sure to go check that out. I mean, like I said, I was watching that and I was like, hey, I don't remember exactly what you said it cost, but I mean, I was like, that's a good deal. That
$249 for the whole
that's
kit.
Not bad. I mean,
and it's free shipping.
If you was to go try to buy a bow, turn around, buy a sight, buy a release, buy your rests, turn around and try to buy your arrow. I mean, if you were to try to piece everything together, it would be hard for a brand new bow, it would be hard to keep it under that price range.
Yeah, even most of the lower end Bear setups are $249, $300, and they don't come with arrows or a release or any of that stuff. You know, the one thing you might have to upgrade on this setup is the arrows. Everything else is fine, and then it comes with a bunch of field points too. So you can just take the field points off the arrows. It comes with a dozen of them, and like I said, literally the only thing you may have to upgrade is arrows. And I cover that in the video.
Right. Awesome. Another question this is coming from a relatively large guy. He is, he's a pretty big guy. He's 6'3", 6'4", I think. Obviously, so he has a really long draw length. He's new to the realm of bow hunting, and he had a question talking about a stabilizer, picking the right stabilizer. Do you have any tips or suggestions for that?
Yeah, so there's a few major things with stabilizers. One is there's a large misconception that this purpose of a stabilizer is for shock absorption, and that's not the case. Matter of fact, that is the least important factor for me personally when I'm picking a stabilizer. The purpose of a stabilizer is to help you balance the weight of the bow and keep it steady in your hand so you can make better shots. So I look for a stabilizer that has adjustable weight system, so I can adjust how much weight is out front and adjust the balance of my bow. And then I also look for a stabilizer that has a small diameter bar, which is basically the body of the stabilizer. And the reason I do that is that bar will act as a wind sail if it's too big and bulky, and I don't want that because honestly, we hunt in windy conditions sometimes. I don't want to add anything else to already that big sail out in front of me.
That makes sense.
So So as far as picking a stabilizer, as of course, pick something within your budget. But the first feature for me is always going to be adjustability and weight out front. And then the second feature is going to be just a small diameter bar. I personally shoot a Fire Knock stabilizer. It's titanium, very small diameter, and I can adjust the weight out front. And then it's silver, so I just bought a thing of shrink tube off of Amazon and put it over top. It was like $3 for the roll of shrink tube. And now it's a black stabilizer.
Oh, there you go. That's easy enough.
Yeah. I think the stabilizer total, I've got $50 or $60 in it.
That's not bad. That's really not bad.
Nope. And the hand shock is the idea of eliminating hand shock with a stabilizer is an old idea from past technologies that have long gone. Most modern compound bows don't have enough hand shock for you to even have to worry about it. So if you find a stabilizer that has those features and does shock absorption, that's great. But again, just don't focus on that. Focus on the other things first.
Sure. Awesome. Well, man, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody how they can find you on your social medias? Give them that whole spiel.
Yep. So it's Chest Thumper Outdoors. It's CHEST space THUMPER Outdoors. And that's on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. I have a Twitter, but I don't use Twitter, so don't bother looking me up on there. TikTok is how I interact pretty rapidly with most of my followers, but most of my video content is going to be on YouTube. I really focus on YouTube. I also have a website called thectoutdoors.com, and on my website I have a blog. I've got merch for sale, and then I post a lot of my gear, that broadheads I've tested, gear that I've used in the past that I'm getting rid of. I post a lot of it on there at really solidly discounted prices. And again, that's to help people save money if they want to try new stuff, or if maybe they can't afford anything, or even if you can afford new stuff and you just want to save some money, that's up there for you. I've got broadhead options. Most of them sell for around $20. I've got $10 for some of them. I've got camo on there right now. I've got a target bow set up. So I've got all kinds of things, and I'm constantly posting new stuff on there.
Awesome. Well, man, thank you for jumping on this podcast with us. I've had a lot of fun with this. I didn't realize that we had it's already down here where I'm at. It's 8:41. Time has flown, man.
yeah, man. We've had a lot of fun. Time always flies when you're having a lot of fun, though. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I appreciate you so much for inviting me on. I love talking about this stuff, and I love interacting with people that share the same things that I love.
Absolutely, man. Sharing a passion with somebody, and it doesn't matter if I've met them for the first time or if I've talked to them 5,000 times. Being able to talk with somebody that shares that love and that passion, man, it's great. It's always a great time.
Yeah, man. Some of my best friends I met on Facebook archery groups, and one of my best friends I've only met in person twice. We've met in person twice, but it's somebody I talk to on a nearly regular basis, and what connected us was a Facebook hunting group.
Well, it's amazing how an industry, something like this, can do that. And I say an industry, the fact that y'all were in the same group on a Facebook group, and it's just one of those things. You hit it off, and you never know when it's going to happen, but when it does, it's certainly an awesome thing.
Yeah, again, I've met some of my best friends in the world from Facebook archery groups, and I wouldn't trade them and trade that experience for anything. It's cool how much everybody can get together and be brought together on something they love. Usually.
Oh, absolutely. Well, man, anytime you would like to come back and be on the show again, we would absolutely love to have you. This has been a lot of fun, and hopefully this will generate some more questions. There were some things that we didn't even get wrapped up in, talking about sites and stuff like that. Like I said, I've already had you on here for a long time. I hate to keep you. So if you're down to do another one, I would love to have you back on here again.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Let's plan a part 2 and a part 3 or 4 after. I'm down whenever you're down.
Awesome, man. That sounds great. Well, guys, thank you all for checking out this episode of Outdoor Genetics with our guest speaker, Trent from Chest Thumper. Once again, man, we appreciate you being on here. Guys, make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on that bell notification so that you will be notified whenever we upload more content. So until next time, guys, we will see y'all later.